How do we measure a life? By the miles walked, the rooms dusted, the birthdays counted, or by the small, soft things we do when no one is watching? Before we continue, if you love stories that warm your heart and awaken emotions that help you to become a better person, be sure to subscribe to this channel and show your love by liking the video. If you enjoy it, share a story with us, one that filled your heart with joy and emotion. It might inspire our next video. Maggie Collins could not answer with numbers. She answered with a routine: dawn, the kettle's sigh, the slow tying of a plain apron. At 74, she measured time by the clock above the Willow Diner's counter and by the way light changed on the diner's linoleum tiles, a thin, warm band at 7:30, a long, cool stripe by 4. She kept one ritual that everyone said was small. Every December she bought a single poinsettia and put it on her kitchen windowsill. It was a red punctuation to winter's grey, a promise to someone who could no longer hold hands in the dark. The Willow Diner smelled like coffee and fried dough, like the lemon cleaner the cook insisted on using. The radio hummed old songs that tugged at Maggie's sleeve like an old friend. She liked to polish the counter between customers, watch steam fog the windows, and listen to the day's stories float past her ears. Her hands were knotted at the knuckles, but they held plates steady. Her voice was soft, the kind people leaned toward. On Christmas Eve, the diner was full of small who's and wheres, of mittens left on chairs and laughter that softened at the edges. A young father with tired eyes sat with 2 children who kept passing a paper star between them. He paid what he could. When the bill came, there was a thin silence. The waitress behind the next counter shook her head. The family's voice dropped to the level of breath. Maggie watched the coin tray clatter like a small bell. She thought of her own son, gone across a blue line of years, and of the way her husband used to fold his napkin twice before speaking. She thought of how many Christmases had been ordinary. Soup, a record played twice, the same worn chair pulled closer to the table. Maggie walked over with 2 plates. "More coffee?" she asked, and the children brightened like lights. The father managed a grateful smile. When the moment came to settle the bill, Maggie did something quiet and decisive. She laid a $10 bill next to the family's change and slid the check toward the father with hands that had learned to give without announcing. "No," the father said at first. "You can't. It's done," Maggie said. Her voice was thin but sure. "Merry Christmas." A tiny bell over the diner's door rang as someone left. Outside, snow had begun to dust the street, softening the town's edges. Inside, Forks paused. The moment felt like a page turning, a single gesture that would ripple outward. It was also a quiet test, one small, honest kindness that would, without fanfare, ask the question of every listener: what would you do? At the window, Maggie looked at her poinsettia, its red petals small as flags, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the diner's heater. She did not yet know that morning would bring a stranger in a dark suit and a limousine idling at the curb. For now, she only knew the sound of a spoon against a cup, a child's laugh, and the steady rhythm of time measured in ordinary things. Snow tapped softly against the diner windows the next morning, like someone knocking with delicate fingers. Maggie arrived early, as she always did, her breath forming small clouds in the air before the heater woke up. She hung her coat, tied her apron, and let the quiet settle around her like a familiar blanket. The Willow Diner was never truly silent. There was always something humming. A refrigerator, the slow tick of the wall clock, the first drip of the coffee maker. But that morning, something felt different. Not wrong, just waiting. At the counter, Maggie noticed an envelope she hadn't seen when she closed the diner the night before. It was small, cream-colored, and resting where the tired father had been sitting with his children. Her name was written in a steady hand. For Maggie. "Thank you." Her fingers trembled a little as she opened it. Inside was a note written on a plain diner napkin. People like you still make this world a softer place. I didn't know how to say it yesterday, but your kindness held us together. Someday I hope I can repay what you gave us. Merry Christmas. Michael. The name tugged at something in her memory. A faint echo, nothing more, but she folded the napkin carefully and pressed it to her chest. "Everything all right, Maggie?" asked Ella, the cook, sticking her head out from the kitchen. Her hair was already pinned back, flour on her cheek. "Yes," Maggie said softly. "Just a nice note." Ella smiled. "Doesn't surprise me. You're always doing something for someone." But Maggie didn't feel like someone extraordinary. She felt like a woman trying her best to keep the world gentle in the ways she could. A warm cup here, a paid bill there, a smile when someone looked lost. She tucked the note into her apron pocket. It felt like a small heartbeat resting against her. By noon, the diner grew livelier. Customers came and went, shaking snow from their shoulders. The bell chimed over and over, but every now and then, Maggie's hand went to her pocket, just to make sure the note was still there. She didn't see the dark sedan that passed slowly outside. She didn't see the man inside, glancing toward the windows, looking for someone he hadn't met yet. She only saw the poinsettia when she returned home after her shift, its red petals bright against the winter light, and wondered why her heart felt as if something was coming, something she was not prepared for. The following morning dawned grey and still, the sky the colour of old pewter. Maggie stepped outside to fetch her newspaper and nearly dropped it when she saw the car parked at the curb, a long black limousine. She blinked, thinking perhaps her eyes were playing tricks on her. No one in her neighbourhood drove anything fancier than a pickup truck or old sedan. The limousine looked like a visiting monarch in a row of modest houses. Before she could retreat inside, the passenger door opened. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a dark wool coat, black gloves, and a scarf neatly tucked into his collar. His movements were deliberate, graceful, like someone accustomed to being watched. "Mrs. Margaret Collins?" he asked in a warm, measured voice. Maggie wrapped her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "Yes, I'm Maggie." The man smiled, and it wasn't the cold, polite smile of someone important. It was gentle, a little sad even. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said. "I've been looking for you." Her heart gave a small, startled kick. "Looking for me? Why?" Daniel hesitated, as if choosing each word carefully. "There was a family at the Willow Diner 2 nights ago," he said. "A young man, his wife, and 2 children." Maggie nodded slowly. "Yes, they were having a hard time." "You helped them," Daniel said. "You didn't have to, but you did." She felt suddenly shy, as if someone had read a private diary. It was nothing. People help each other. That's how things are supposed to be. Daniel's eyes softened. To you it may be nothing. To them it was everything. A small wind brushed past them, lifting Maggie's thinning hair. She clutched the doorframe. "Sir, what does any of this have to do with you?" Daniel looked down, then back at her with quiet gravity. "That young father," he said. "His name is Michael Carter." Maggie felt the name again, that same strange tug, like a memory trying to surface. "He's my son," Daniel continued, "and we've been estranged for years." Silence fell between them, shaped by old wounds neither of them knew. "He told me what you did for him," Daniel said, "and it moved me in a way I can't quite explain. He's asked me to come here, to bring you somewhere." "Bring me," Maggie whispered. "Where?" Daniel stepped aside, gesturing toward the open limousine door. He said only this: "Please bring her. She changed our Christmas. I want to change her tomorrow. Maggie stood frozen on her porch, heart trembling, not knowing that her ordinary life had just stepped into its own turning point. A place where kindness echoes back unexpectedly, like a distant bell coming home. Maggie hesitated at the open door of the limousine. The interior glowed softly, warm lights reflecting off dark leather seats. She had never been inside a car like this. She had barely ridden in a taxi. Her world was one of bus rides, worn shoes, and familiar sidewalks. "Are you sure this is for me?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded. "I'm certain." With careful steps, she climbed in. The seat was so soft it almost startled her. She sat on the very edge, hands folded tightly on her lap, afraid to disturb anything. Daniel took the seat across from her, giving her space. The car began to move. Houses slipped past the window like slow-moving memories. Maggie looked out at the familiar streets. "I don't understand why your son would want to see me. I barely know him." "You showed him kindness when he felt invisible," Daniel said. "That means more than you realize." Maggie swallowed. "He left a note for me. A very sweet one." "Yes," Daniel replied. "He showed it to me. It reminded me of the kind of man he was before our disagreements pushed us apart." The silence between them grew thoughtful, not heavy. Maggie sensed a father's regret lingering in his voice, the kind of regret that older hearts know too well. "Families drift," she said softly, "sometimes without meaning to." Daniel's eyes glistened for a moment. "Do you have children, Mrs. Collins?" "One," she whispered. "A son. I haven't seen him in a long time." "By choice?" Maggie shook her head. "By life." Daniel nodded, as if he understood more from that single word than an entire story. The limo slowed as it left town and approached the old Carter estate, a grand but quiet property on the edge of the woods. Snow covered the rooftop like powdered sugar. Lights glowed from within, warm and inviting. "Why am I here?" Maggie asked again, her voice trembling. Daniel opened the door for her. "My son believes you deserve more than a thank you." The front door opened. Someone stepped out, bundled in a coat, waving with both hands. It was Michael. "Maggie!" he called with a bright, emotional smile. Behind him, two children peeked through the doorway, their faces glowing as if greeting a long-lost relative. Maggie touched her chest. A simple act of kindness had led her here, a place she never expected, and a reunion she did not yet understand. The moment Maggie stepped inside the Carter home, warmth washed over her. The smell of cinnamon, the crackling fireplace, the faint sound of children laughing down the hall. It felt like Christmas as she remembered it from long ago, before absence became a quiet companion. Michael took her coat gently, treating her with the kind of respect one usually reserves for cherished family. "We wanted you to feel welcome," he said. "You changed everything for us." "For one dinner?" Maggie asked, shyly bewildered. "For more than that," Michael said. He motioned her toward the living room. A large tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments. The children sat cross-legged at its base, waiting. "Mrs. Collins," the eldest said, holding up something. "Look what we found." It was a photograph. Old, faded, edges curled. Maggie's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she took it from the child. The image showed a woman holding a little boy at a park, a boy no older than 6. The woman's smile was unmistakable, her own, and the boy. Her throat tightened painfully. Where did you get this?" she whispered. Michael exchanged a glance with Daniel, who stepped forward slowly. "We found it in one of my father's old keepsake boxes," Michael said gently. "He keeps mementos of people from town, lives he's crossed, helped, or hoped to help." Daniel cleared his throat. "I didn't know your name then, but I remembered the day vividly. You were at Lakeside Park with your son. He had scraped his knee. You were comforting him." Maggie clutched the picture, tears blinking into view. That was more than 40 years ago. Yes, Daniel said softly. But some moments stay. Michael took a seat beside her. Is this your boy? Maggie nodded, unable to speak. His name is Peter. Where is he now? Michael asked gently. She swallowed a shakier breath. Somewhere I can't reach. Life took him far, and time widened the distance. The room fell quiet, respectful. Daniel lowered himself into a chair across from her. I kept that photograph because that moment reminded me of something I lost myself. Patience, perhaps. Kindness. I didn't know it would one day lead me back to you. Maggie held the photograph to her heart. A memory long buried, a reminder of a love that had never truly vanished, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that forgotten paths sometimes find their way back, even after decades of silence. Maggie sat still on the Carter family sofa, the old photograph resting in her lap like a fragile piece of her past. The fire crackled, sending soft shadows dancing across the room. Michael's children had wandered off to play, leaving the adults in a quiet, reflective circle. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. There's something my son wants to show you, he said. Michael nodded and rose, motioning for Maggie to follow him down a short hallway. Her steps were slow, unsure, as though she were walking into a memory she wasn't certain she was ready to relive. He opened a door to a cozy room filled with stacks of papers, small paintings, boxes of old letters, and photographs pinned to corkboards. A lifetime of stories rested on dusty shelves. I've been working on something, Michael said. Something for people in this town who've helped others without asking anything in return. Maggie gazed around, her brows lifting. This looks like a whole museum. Michael chuckled softly. It's more like a project. A way to preserve the kindness in our community. I call it the Hall of Quiet Hearts. The name made her chest ache sweetly. That's beautiful. It's still unfinished, he said, stepping toward a corkboard. But I wanted to show you the first piece I put up. Pinned at the top was the diner receipt from Christmas Eve, folded carefully under glass. Beside it was her own name, written in neat marker. Margaret Collins, the woman who made Christmas feel possible. Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh, no, Michael, I don't deserve that. You do, he said firmly. You don't know how defeated I felt that night. I had failed my family. I thought I'd ruined Christmas. And then you stepped in like an answer to a prayer. Her eyes filled again, not with sorrow this time, but with something warm and deeply human. Mrs. Collins, Michael continued gently, we want you to come to the community gathering tomorrow night. We're unveiling the first part of the project. We want you there as our guest of honor. Me, she breathed. A guest of honor? Yes, he said. You changed one night of our lives. We want to honor the years of nights you've changed for others. Maggie looked at the receipt, at the name beside it, and felt her heart stretch wider than it had in a long time. Something beautiful was unfolding, something she had never expected to be part of. The next day dawned bright, with a sunlight so pale it looked like it had been washed in milk. Maggie woke early, nerves fluttering like small birds in her chest. She stood at her mirror, brushing her short silver hair with slow, thoughtful strokes. Her best dress lay on the bed, a soft navy blue one she had worn only to weddings and funerals. She touched its fabric, wondering if it was appropriate for something as unfamiliar as being honored. Her tiny apartment felt strangely too quiet, as though even the walls were holding their breath. As she prepared tea, her gaze drifted to the photograph of her son that she kept tucked behind a magnet on the refrigerator. Peter, at age 10. Freckles, messy hair, a smile he rarely showed as an adult. She touched his face gently. I wish you could see this, she whispered. For a moment she imagined him standing at the doorway, teasing her about fussing with her collar or asking if she wanted him to drive her. But the image faded, leaving only the kettle's rising hiss. Later that afternoon, the limousine returned. This time Maggie stepped inside with less fear, though her hands still trembled slightly. Daniel smiled warmly as she entered. "You look lovely," he said. She blushed. It's been a long time since anyone said that. As they drove toward the community hall, she watched the snowy town glide past. The library, where she once read stories to children, the corner store that still sold penny candies, the park where she and her husband used to walk after dinner. Every place held a memory, a quiet chapter of her life. But tonight felt like a turning page. When the limousine stopped, she saw cars lining the street and lights glowing through the windows of the hall. People gathered at the entrance, scarves wrapped tight, cheeks red from the cold. As soon as she stepped out, someone gasped. Then someone else whispered, "Is that Maggie Collins?" And suddenly faces turned. Warm, familiar faces she had served pancakes to, poured coffee for, listened to on lonely afternoons. "Maggie," a woman called. "You're the one they're honoring tonight." Maggie's breath caught. I didn't know people knew." "Oh, honey," the woman said, taking her hand. "Everyone knows what kind of heart you have." The doors opened, and a small crowd ushered her inside. The hall was full. Lights glowed. Music drifted softly from speakers. And for the first time in many years, Maggie Collins felt seen. The community hall seemed to glow from within, warm lights reflecting off polished wooden floors. People stepped aside so Maggie could walk through the center aisle. She felt small in the sea of kind faces, but also strangely lifted, as if the room itself were holding her up. Michael approached the podium at the front. His children stood beside him, their hands clasped. Daniel remained close to Maggie, as though ready to steady her at any moment. "Thank you all for coming," Michael began. His voice wavered slightly. "Tonight, we unveil the first chapter of a project dedicated to the unsung kindness in our town, the Hall of Quiet Hearts." He paused, glancing toward Maggie with gratitude that made her cheeks warm. "You all know Maggie Collins," he continued. "She's served most of us at the Willow Diner for more years than she would ever admit. She has listened to our troubles, remembered our favorites, and treated every customer like family. But last Christmas Eve, she did something that changed my life." A hush swept through the hall. Michael lifted the framed receipt, the one from that night, and held it for everyone to see. "She helped me when I was ashamed. She gave my family a Christmas we thought we didn't deserve. She reminded me of the kind of man I should be and the kind of father my children need." Beside her, Daniel exhaled slowly. Pride and sorrow mixed in his eyes. Michael gestured toward the long wall behind him, covered with new wooden panels. "So tonight, we begin this project with her. The first name, the first story." A curtain pulled aside, revealing a polished plaque that read, "Margaret Maggie Collins, for quiet kindness that changed a Christmas." A soft gasp rippled across the room. Maggie stared at the plaque, unsure how to breathe. Tears rose unexpectedly, and she pressed a hand over her heart. "I'm not special," she whispered to Daniel. "Yes," he said gently, "you are. Look around." She did. People were crying, smiling, nodding at her like old friends who had been waiting years to tell her how much she mattered. Michael stepped from the podium and approached her slowly, as if approaching someone precious. "Maggie," he said softly, "we want you to say something, even a few words, if you feel comfortable." Her knees almost buckled. "Oh, I've never spoken in front of a room like this." "You've spoken kindness every day of your life," Daniel reminded her. "This is no different." Music hummed low in the background, a familiar Christmas melody, and the room leaned toward her, waiting. Maggie took a small breath and stepped forward. Maggie reached the podium with Daniel's steadying hand at her elbow. The microphone looked enormous, too serious for someone who had spent her life carrying plates and pouring coffee. But when she placed both hands on the wooden surface, something inside her settled. She looked out at the crowd, neighbors, co-workers, old faces she remembered from years of early morning shifts and late-night refills. Her voice came out soft but clear. "I don't know what to say," she began. "I've lived in this town my whole life. I've seen children grow up, move away, come back. I've listened to people talk about dreams they were too shy to chase, and fears they didn't want anyone else to know." She paused, emotion tightening her throat. "I always thought my job was small. Just coffee and eggs, just listening, just being there." A murmur of warmth washed through the room. "But life teaches you something when you get older," she continued. "It teaches you that nothing small stays small. Every kindness grows somewhere. Every gentle moment travels further than we can see." Her eyes found Michael's children watching her with wide admiration. Then they found Daniel, quiet, respectful, carrying a lifetime of love and regret. "When I helped Michael and his family," Maggie said, "I wasn't doing anything brave. I was just remembering what it feels like to need help and not know how to ask for it." A tear slipped down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. "I've made mistakes in my life. I've lost people I never thought I'd lose. I've held on to memories like lifelines. And sometimes I've wondered if my life made any difference at all." Gasps and soft, "Oh, Maggie," echoed through the audience. "But tonight," she whispered, voice trembling, "you made me feel like it did." Silence followed, a heavy, emotional silence, until the entire room rose in a standing ovation. Applause thundered like warm rain on a roof. The lights seemed brighter. The air felt lighter. Maggie's knees wobbled, and Daniel caught her gently, helping her down from the podium. "You did wonderfully," he said. She smiled through tears. "I didn't know people saw me." "They always saw you," Daniel replied. "They just never had a chance to say it." Michael approached, tears on his cheeks. "Maggie, thank you for everything." Children tugged her hands. Elderly neighbors hugged her. Every face seemed touched, changed, warmed. And in that moment, surrounded by a community she never knew she had lifted, Maggie felt a truth deep inside. Her life had mattered more than she ever believed. After the applause softened and the crowd slowly drifted into gentle conversations, Maggie stepped outside the community hall for a breath of cold night air. Snowflakes floated down like quiet blessings, melting on her warm cheeks. The sky above was calm, a deep, velvety blue, dotted with stars that looked almost close enough to touch. Daniel followed her out, hands in his coat pockets. "You held the whole room tonight," he said softly. She smiled, brushing a tear from the corner of her eye. "I didn't hold them. They held me." Michael appeared beside them, his two children wrapped in scarves and giggling as they tried to catch snowflakes on their tongues. He cleared his throat gently. "There's one more thing," he said. Maggie frowned playfully. Goodness, what could possibly be left? Michael handed her a small envelope sealed with gold wax. She opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a simple document with her name beautifully printed at the top. A lifetime meal card, unlimited, Willow Diner, in honor of the woman who fed souls, not just stomachs. Maggie chuckled through her tears. "Oh, now this is too much." "That's not all," Daniel gently added. He gestured toward the limousine waiting at the curb. Maggie followed him, curious and unsure. The door was opened, and she slid inside once more, settling into the soft leather as if it were an old friend. The car took a short route, only a few blocks away, and stopped in front of her apartment building, but something was different. Warm lights glowed from inside her windows, and shadows of people moved around. Maggie stepped out, confused. "What's going on?" When she opened her door, she froze. Her apartment had been cleaned, painted, and quietly refreshed. A new armchair sat by the window. A quilt, handmade, was folded neatly on the couch. A framed copy of her award from the hall hung above the table. In the corner sat a small Christmas tree decorated with paper stars made by Michael's children. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "We wanted your home to feel like the home you've given others," Daniel said behind her. "Warm, seen, loved." Maggie turned, tears streaming freely now. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Michael said. "You taught us kindness by living it." The children hugged her legs, giggling. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and in that quiet room, lit softly by tree lights and filled with the echoes of love, Maggie felt her heart settle into a peaceful rhythm she hadn't known in years. She finally understood a truth life had been whispering all along. One small kindness can return to you in ways you could never imagine. And the moments we give away freely are the ones that stay forever.